Namaskar, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, students and scholars, teachers and trainers, professors, professionals, officials, listener, learners. I welcome all respected doctors and directors. I welcome honorable ministers and managers. I welcome the most honorable President Modi ji. I welcome honorable advocates, advertisers, administrator advisors. Dr. Rakesh from USA, heartily cordially welcome. It is a really nice time, nice place, nice action today that we are explaining international law and human rights. You are listening from YouTube channel 3M Creators. I expect that you will admire, appreciate and subscribe this channel, share, send it further near your friends, near and dear ones. So let's go through today what is happening around the world. फ्लाइट ऑपरेशन अभी CAT थर्ड स्थिति में चल रहा है जिससे देरी या रुकावट हो सकती है कोडिफिकेशन एंड प्रोग्रेसिव डेवलपमेंट ऑफ इंटरनेशनल लॉ मीनिंग एंड डेफिनेशन by the term codification we ordinarily mean the process reducing the whole body of law into code in the form of enacted law. It generally connotes a systematic arrangement of the rules of law which are already in existence. According to Sir H. Litterbatch, the task of codifying international law, if it is to mean anything, must be primarily one of bringing about an agreed body of rules already covered by customary or conventional agreement of state. But this is the narrow meaning of the term codification. In its wider sense, it may also mean modification of the existing rules of law so as to keep them pace with time and adapt them in accordance with the needs of time. There is a school of thought which holds that codification in the proper sense of the word can only mean writing down of already existing rules, though it usually has to be considered that in practice, even a strict codification in this sense may involve the making of few minor changes in the law. To adopt too strict a definition of the process involved is therefore to defeat the very ends for which the machinery is to be employed. Codification means any systematic statement of the whole or part of the law in written form, and that it does not necessarily imply a process which leaves the main substance of law unchanged, even though this may be true of some cases. In other words, codification properly conceived, it is itself a method of the progressive development of law. The two processes, progressive development and qualification, far from being mutually exclusive, in fact merge. Reference Reference may also be made here to Article 15 of the Statute of the International Law Commission, which provides that the expression progressive development of international law is used for convenience as meaning the preparation of draft convention on subjects which may which have not yet been regulated by international law or in regard to which the law yet has not been sufficiently the very ends for which the machinery is to be employed. Therefore, codification of international law is used for convenience as meaning the more precise formulation and systematization of rules of international law in fields where there already has been extensive state practice, precedent, and doctrine. It may be noted that mere codification without the element of progressive development would defeat the very purpose of lawmaking by introducing a static concept of law. Thus, it is now well recognized by all codifying institutions to consider equally the developmental aspect while engaged in the codification of the law. In fact, progressive development is the very life and blood of codification. In short, therefore, the first essential ingredient of codification is furnished by the aspect relating to progressive development, which must always remain the very peak of this theme. This must necessarily be so if the legislative function has at all to be performed for the international community, so essential for the maintenance of world public order. क्षेत्रीय और वैश्विक मुद्दे राष्ट्रपति डोनाल्ड ट्रंप ने प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी से फोन पर बात की। अपने प्रिय मित्र राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप से बातचीत करके बहुत अच्छा लगा। पीएम से लेकिन इंडिया उत्पादों पर अब टैरिफ घटकर 18%, 1.4 अरब भारतीयों की ओर से राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप का हार्दिक स्वागत। कोहरे के चलते दिल्ली एयरपोर्ट ने जारी की एडवाइजरी। फ्लाइट ऑपरेशन अभी CAT-3 जिससे देरी या रुकावट हो सकती है। यात्रियों को असुविधा कम हो। फ्लाइट की लेटेस्ट स्टेटस के लिए लाइन से करें संपर्क। शांति वार्ता के लिए आमने सामने होंगे रूस यूक्रेन। यूक्रेन अमेरिका और रूस के बीच त्रिपक्षीय वार्ता का दूसरा दौरा 4 से 5 फरवरी को अबू धाबी में त्रिपक्षीय वार्ता। रूस का कीव पर मिसाइल और ड्रोन हमला। रूस के हमले से कई अपार्टमेंट और इमारतें क्षतिग्रस्त। हालात को देखते हुए आपातकालीन मेडिकल टीमें भेजी गई। भारत नॉर्वे के बीच हुई विदेश मंत्रालय परामर्श बैठक। नॉर्वे की राजधानी ओस्लो में हुई 12वीं द्विपक्षीय वार्ता। द्विपक्षीय संबंधों को और मजबूत करने की दिशा में बड़ा कदम। भारत और नॉर्वे ने सहयोग के नए रास्तों पर की चर्चा। राजनीतिक, व्यापार और निवेश के क्षेत्र में सहयोग बढ़ाने की सहमति। नवीकरणीय ऊर्जा, एआई, विज्ञान और प्रौद्योगिकी पर चर्चा। क्षेत्रीय और वैश्विक मुद्दों पर किया विचारों का आदान प्रदान। भारत सरकार के राष्ट्रीय व्यापारी कल्याण बोर्ड ने व्यापारियों के साथ सीधा संवाद सुनिश्चित करने के लिए शुरू की शानदार पहल। अपने प्रिय मित्र राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप से मेक इन इंडिया उत्पादों पर अब टैरिफ कम। 1.4 भारतीयों की ओर से राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप का हार्दिक आभार। पीएम से कोहरे के चलते दिल्ली एयरपोर्ट ने जारी की एडवाइजरी। फ्लाइट ऑपरेशन अभी CAT-3 स्थितियों में चल रहे हैं, जिससे देरी या रुकावट हो सकती है। हिस्ट्री ऑफ कॉडिफिकेशन। The history of codification dates back to the end of the 18th century, when the idea of codification of international law was conceived by Bentham. Before him, an unsuccessful attempt was made by the French Convention to draw up a Declaration of the Rights of Nation in 1792. Declaration of Paris 1856. The Declaration of Paris occupies a piece of significance in the development of international law. The declaration was signed by Britain, France, Austria, Russia, Turkey, Prussia, and Sardinia after the end of the Crimean War in 1856. This declaration laid down the principles leading to abolition of privateering, non-capture of neutral goods except contraband of war under enemy flags, blockade to be binding must be effective and accept contraband of war enemy goods cannot be captured under neutral flag. Codification of individual writers. राष्ट्रपति डोनाल्ड ट्रंप ने प्रधानमंत्री मोदी से फोन पर की बात। आओ सीखें संस्कृत। अपने प्रिय मित्र राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप से बात करके बहुत अच्छा लगा। पीएम से मेड इन इंडिया उत्पादों पर अब टैरिफ घटकर 18% लगेगा। पीएम से फ्लाइट ऑपरेशन अभी CAT-3 स्थिति में चल रहे हैं। कुछ शब्दों के लेखन और भाषण के साथ जाने उनके वास्तविक स्वरूप को भी। संस्कृत भाषा। Codification by individual writers. Some individual writers also contributed to the codification of international law. The first important attempt in this connection was made in 1861 by an Austrian jurist, Alphonse von Domin Petrus Nevers, who for the first time showed the possibility of the codification of international law in 1863. Professor Francis Lieber of Columbia University Law School, New York, attempted to codify the laws of war. Besides this, Swiss jurist Bluntschli in 1868, David Dudley-Field in 1872, Levy in 1887, Italian jurist Pascal Flor in 1890, E. Duplessis in 1906, and Jerome Internasola in 1911 published their codes of international law. Moreover, Oppenheim Hall, Fillmore, and Hyde also deserve the credit of bringing out the rules of international law in a systematized form of record. The two Hague conferences, the first Hague conference, which was convened by Emperor Nicholas of Nicholas II of Russia in 1899, resulted in the adoption of following two conventions in the form of word. One is Convention on the Pacific Settlement of International Disputes, and two is Convention on the Laws and Customs of War on Land. These conventions proved to be great milestone in the field of codification of international law. Being encouraged with the results of the first Hague Conference, the second Hague Conference was convened in 1907. This conference produced as many as 13 conventions relating to warfare and neutrality in war on land and at sea, the status of enemy merchantmen at the outbreak of war, bombardment by naval forces, conversion of merchantship into men of war. This conference was attended by 44 states. Declaration of London. A naval conference was held in 1909 at London to draw up an agreed list of contraband goods. The agreement list was incorporated in a declaration known as the Declaration of London 1909, but it never came into force as it was not ratified. It lost all its importance on account of the development of First World War 1914 into a total war. राजनीतिक व्यापार और निवेश के क्षेत्र में सहयोग बढ़ाना, नवीकरणीय ऊर्जा, एआई, विज्ञान और प्रौद्योगिकी पर भी विशेष चर्चा, क्षेत्रीय और वैश्विक मुद्दों पर किया विचारों का आदान प्रदान। राष्ट्रपति डोनाल्ड ट्रंप ने की प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी से फोन पर बात। पीएम से अपने विदेश मित्र राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप से बात करके बहुत अच्छा लगा। मेड इन इंडिया उत्पादों पर टैरिफ घटकर 18% लगेगा। 1.4 अरब भारतीयों की ओर से राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप का हार्दिक आभार। कोहरे के चलते दिल्ली एयरपोर्ट ने जारी की एडवाइजरी। फ्लाइट ऑपरेशन अभी CAT-3 स्थितियों में चल रहा है, जिससे देरी या रुकावट हो सकती है। यात्रियों को असुविधा कम हो, हम मिलकर रहे हैं काम। फ्लाइट के लेटेस्ट स्टेटस के लिए एयरलाइन से करें संपर्क। शांति वार्ता के लिए फिर आमने सामने होंगे रूस यूक्रेन। यूक्रेन, अमेरिका और रूस के बीच त्रिपक्षीय वार्ता का दूसरा दौरा। 4 से 5 फरवरी को आबू धाबी में त्रिपक्षीय वार्ता। रूस का कीव पर मिसाइल। रूस के हमले से कई अपार्टमेंट और इमारतें क्षतिग्रस्त। हालात को देखते हुए आपातकालीन मेडिकल टीमें भेजी गई। भारतीय नॉर्वे के बीच हुई विदेश मंत्रालय परामर्श बैठक। नॉर्वे की राजधानी ओस्लो में हुई 12वीं विदेश मंत्रालय बैठक। द्विपक्षीय संबंधों को और मजबूत करने की दिशा में बड़ा कदम। भारत और नॉर्वे ने सहयोग के नए रास्तों पर की चर्चा। राजनीति, व्यापार और निवेश के क्षेत्र में सहयोग बढ़ाने की सहमति। नवीकरणीय ऊर्जा, एआई, विज्ञान और प्रौद्योगिकी पर भी विशेष चर्चा। क्षेत्रीय वैश्विक मुद्दों पर किया विचारों का आदान प्रदान। राष्ट्रपति डोनाल्ड ट्रंप ने प्रधानमंत्री मोदी से फोन पर की बात। अपने प्रिय मित्र राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप से बातचीत करके बहुत अच्छा लगा। पीएम से मेड इन इंडिया उत्पादों पर अब टैरिफ घटकर 18% लगेगा। पीएम से 1.4 अरब भारतीयों की ओर से राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप का हार्दिक आभार। कोहरे के चलते दिल्ली एयरपोर्ट ने जारी की एडवाइजरी। फ्लाइट ऑपरेशन अभी C-83 सीक्वेंस में चल रहा है, जिससे देरी या रुकावट हो सकती है। यात्रियों को असुविधा कम हो, अब मिलकर कर रहे हैं काम। फ्लाइट के लेटेस्ट स्टेटस के लिए एयरलाइन से करें संपर्क। शांति वार्ता के लिए फिर आमने सामने होंगे रूस यूक्रेन। Qualification under the League of Nations. The work of qualification of international law received a great impetus under the League of Nations. It was left to the League of Nations to approach in a systematic manner the problem of qualification, properly called. The League Council appointed a committee of 16 jurists in 1924 to report to Council subjects which were ripe for qualification. The committee recommended that the following subjects were ripe for qualification. One is nationality, two is territorial waters, three is state responsibility for damage done in their territory to the person or property of foreigners, four is diplomatic immunities and privileges, five is procedure of international conference and procedure for the conclusion and drafting of treaty. Six is exploitation of the products of the sea. Seven is piracy. On the recommendation of the shared committee at the assembly decided that a conference should be held at Hague for the purpose of codifying the topics of nationality, territorial waters, responsibility of states for the damage done to foreigners in their territory. The committee of experts did not cease its work. It continued its work and reported in 1928 to the Council that the following two topics were also ripe for codification. One, law relating to function and competence of consuls, and two is the competence of courts regarding foreign states. The Hague Codification Conference of 1930. Hague Conference of 1930 may be said to be the first conference on the codification of international law. Three, three committees were set up to three committees were set up for each of the topics, that is nationality, territorial waters and responsibility of states for the damage done to foreigners in their territory. No general agreement could be reached in regard to territorial waters and responsibility of states for the damage done in their territories to the property and person of foreigners, but the Committee on Nationality adopted several conventions on questions relating to the conflict of nationality, laws and status, laws and statelessness. Codification under the United Nations, Article 13(1) of the UN Charter lays down that the General Assembly shall initiate studies and make recommendations for the purpose of promoting international cooperation in the political field and encouraging the progressive development of international law and its codification. The most important task of codification is the systematization and the progressive development of this amorphous and relatively unorganized body of law. It is surely evident that the implementing of Article 13 of the Charter is a task of urgency and importance of which yield place to none of the other problems that face the international law today. The UN General Assembly took the task of encouraging the progressive development of international law and its codification in all seriousness. On December 11, 1946, the General Assembly appointed a committee for the progressive development of international law and its codification. In 1947, the General Assembly decided to set up an International Law Commission. An international law commission was elected and it met on April 11, 1949 as provided under Article 1 of the Statute of the International Law Commission. The Commission shall have for its object the promotion of the progressive development of international law and its codification. The distinction between the two terms has been explained earlier. The Commission also considers proposals and draft multilateral conventions submitted by the members of the UN. The principal organs of the UN, other than the specialized agencies or official bodies established by intergovernment agreement to encourage the progressive development of international law and its codification and transmitted to it for that purpose by the Secretary General. It is provided that the Commission shall survey the whole field of international law with a view to selecting topics for codification, having in mind existing draft, whether governmental or not. When the Commission considers that the codification of a particular topic is necessary or desirable, it shall submit its recommendations to the General Assembly. The Commission shall give no priority to requests to the General Assembly to deal with any question. Further, Article 24 provides that the Commission shall consider ways and means for making the evidence of customary international law more readily available, such as the collection and publication of documents concerning state practice and of the decisions of national and international courts on questions of international law and shall make a report to the General Assembly on this matter. भारत और नॉर्वे ने सहयोग के नए रास्तों पर की चर्चा। राजनीतिक व्यापार और निवेश के क्षेत्र में सहयोग बढ़ाने की सहमति। भारत पर लगे टैरिफ फोन पर हुई दोनों नेताओं के बीच बातचीत। भारत पर टैरिफ घटा। अमेरिकी राष्ट्रपति डोनाल्ड ट्रंप ने पीएम नरेंद्र मोदी से की बात। फोन पर हुई दोनों नेताओं के बीच बातचीत। राष्ट्रपति डोनाल्ड ट्रंप ने प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी से की बात। अपने प्रिय मित्र राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप से बात करके बहुत अच्छा लगा, पीएम से। International Law Commission consists of 34 members, elected for a period of 5 years. Work of the International Law Commission, the establishment of ILC represented a turning point in the codification movement, understood as the movement for the systematic presentation of international law in the form of written rules, representing a statement of existing rules of international customary law or the formulation of new ones. On November 21, 1947, the General Assembly directed the International Law Commission to formulate the principles of international law recognized in Charter as well as in the judgment of the Nuremberg Tribunal to prepare a draft code of offenses against the peace and security of mankind, to prepare a draft declaration on the rights and duties of states, and to suggest the desirability and possibility of establishing an international judicial body for the trial of genocide and certain other crimes. The Commission began its work in 1949 and since then it has done commendable work in respect of the codification of international law. It decided to give priority to the following three topics: one is law of treaties, two is arbitral procedure, and three is law relating to the high seas. By the year 1921, the Commission submitted final draft of report relating to design of the high seas, design of territorial waters, nationality including statelessness, law of treaties, diplomatic intercourse and immunities, consular intercourse and immunities, and arbitral procedure. In addition to this, The Commission has also worked on the following topics: draft declaration on rights and duties of states, formulation of the Nuremberg Principle, draft code of offences against the peace and security of mankind, question of definition of aggression, question of international criminal jurisdiction, question of reservation of multilateral treaties, extended installation, extended participation in general multilateral treaties concluded under the auspices of the League of Nations, nationality, including statelessness, special mission, representatives of states of international organizations, prevention and punishment of crimes against diplomatic agents and other internationally protected persons, the most favored nations clause, state responsibility, succession of states in respect of treaty, succession of states in matters other than treaty, and the law of non-navigational uses of international water courses। फोन पर हुई दोनों नेताओं के बीच बात, भारत पर टैरिफ घटा, अमेरिका ने टैरिफ घटाकर 18% किया, रूस के हमले से हालात को देखते हुए आपातकालीन मेडिकल टीमें भेजी गई, भारत नॉर्वे के बीच हुई विदेश मंत्रालय परामर्श बैठक, भारत पर लगे टैरिफ को 25% से घटाकर 18% किया गया, भारत पर टैरिफ, प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी ने राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप से की बात, मजबूत होते भारत अमेरिकी रिश्ते। It may also be noted that the term of earlier commission expired on 31 December 1976 and on 17 November 1976 the General Assembly elected by secret ballot the entire membership of 25 legal experts of the new commission for 5 years beginning from 1st January 1977. Dr. S.P. Jagota of India was also elected as one of the members of the commission. On 18 November 1981, the General Assembly adopted a resolution 36 by 39 enlarging the membership of the Commission from 25 to 35. According to the following pattern, 8 nationals from African states, 7 nationals from Asian states, 3 nationals from East European states, 6 nationals from Latin American states, and 8 nationals from Western Europe or other states. In fact, the International Law Commission has performed its task with great distinction. Declarations have been initiated, important principles have been formulated, new conventions have been drafted, and the ways and means for making evidence of customary law more readily available received attention to the Commission also. The work of the Commission has been of great importance to the world court, that is, International Court of Justice. For in, administering law and justice, the court had frequently relied upon it. The record of ILC activities over 36 years of its existence includes no less than 30 multinational conventions adopted on the basis of draft worked out in the ILC by special convened United Nations conferences or 2 cases by the Sixth Committee. The ILC conventions comprise such landmark instruments as the four Geneva Conventions on the Law of the Sea 1958, the Convention on Diplomatic Relations of 1961, on Consular Relations 1963, and on the Law of Treaties 1969. 57th session of the Commission was held from 2nd May to 3 June and 11 July to 5 August 2005. The agenda of this session was to follow organization of the work of the session, diplomatic protection, responsibility, shared natural resources, unilateral acts of state, reservation to treaties, expulsion of aliens, effects of armed conflict on treaties, fragmentation of international law, difficulties arising from the diversification and expansion of international law, progress, procedures and working methods, Commission and its documentation, cooperation with other bodies, date and place of 58th session, other business. Throughout the year, the Commission has maintained a close relationship with the International Court of Justice. The Commission is informed by the President of the Court of its recent activities and that of the case currently before it, and the members of Commission are given opportunity to have an exchange of views with the President of the Court. 58th session of the Commission was held from May 1 to 9 June and July 3 to August 11, 2006. 4-5 फरवरी को आबू धाबी की त्रिपक्षीय वार्ता, रूस का कीव पर मिसाइल और ड्रोन हमला, हालात को देखते हुए आपातकालीन मेडिकल टीमें भेजी गई। भारत नॉर्वे के बीच हुई विदेश मंत्रालय परामर्श बैठक, नॉर्वे की राजधानी ओस्लो में हुई 12वीं विदेश मंत्रालय बैठक, द्विपक्षीय संबंधों को और मजबूत करने की दिशा में बड़ा कदम, भारत और नॉर्वे ने सहयोग के नए राष्ट्रों पर की नई चर्चा, राजनीति, व्यापार और निवेश के क्षेत्र में सहयोग बढ़ाने की सहमति, नवीकरणीय ऊर्जा, एआई, विज्ञान और प्रौद्योगिकी पर भी विशेष चर्चा, क्षेत्रीय और वैश्विक मुद्दों पर किया विचारों का आदान प्रदान। राष्ट्रपति डोनाल्ड ट्रंप ने प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी से फोन पर की बात, अपने प्रिय मित्र राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप से बातचीत करके बहुत अच्छा लगा। पीएम से मेड इन इंडिया उत्पादों पर अब टैरिफ घटा 25% से 18% हुआ। 1.4 अरब भारतीयों की ओर से राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप का हार्दिक आभार। पीएम से कोहरे के चलते दिल्ली एयरपोर्ट ने जारी की एडवाइजरी, प्रगति से मिली उत्तराखंड को गति। फ्लाइट ऑपरेशन अभी सीएटी 3 में चल रहे हैं, जिससे देरी या रुकावट हो सकती है, यात्रियों को असुविधा कम मिलकर कर रहे हैं काम। प्रगति से मिली उत्तराखंड को गति। 15 उच्च मूल्य की परियोजनाएं, 12 में से 10 परियोजनाएं पूरी, 32 परियोजनाएं कार्यान्वयन चरण। शांति वार्ता के लिए रूस यूक्रेन अमेरिका और रूस के बीच त्रिपक्षीय वार्ता। 4 से 5 फरवरी को अबू धाबी में त्रिपक्षीय वार्ता। उत्तराखंड में कई अहम परियोजनाओं में आई तेजी, रूस का कीव पर मिसाइल और ड्रोन हमला। विकास @ 50, विकास को गति। रूस के हमले से कई अपार्टमेंट और इमारतें क्षतिग्रस्त। हालात को देखते हुए आपातकालीन मेडिकल टीमें भेजी गई। परियोजनाओं के दौरान आई समस्याएं सुलझी, द्विपक्षीय संबंधों को और मजबूत करने की दिशा में बड़ा कदम। प्रगति से मिली उत्तराखंड को गति। सड़क एवं राजमार्ग 4 परियोजनाएं, तेल एवं गैस 3 परियोजनाएं, विद्युत उत्पादन 1 परियोजना, विमानन अवसंरचना 1 परियोजना, शिक्षा 1 परियोजना, नवीकरणीय ऊर्जा, एआई, विज्ञान और प्रौद्योगिकी पर भी विशेष चर्चा। प्रगति से मिली उत्तराखंड को ज्योति। प्रगति की निगरानी में उत्तराखंड की 42 परियोजनाएं। राष्ट्रपति डोनाल्ड ट्रंप ने प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी से फोन पर की बात। कार्यान्वयन चरण में पहुंची 32 परियोजनाएं। प्रगति @ 50, विकास को गति। अपने मित्र राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप से बातचीत करके बहुत अच्छा लगा। पीएम से recent convention and treaties, Geneva Convention on the Law of Sea 1958, Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations 1961, 1965 Convention on Settlement of Investment Disputes between the states and nationalists of the other states. Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties 1969 are some of the landmarks in the field of codification and progressive development of international law. Besides this, Vienna Convention on Consular Relations 1963, Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Crimes Against Internationally Protected Persons 1973, International Covenants on Human Rights 1966, Convention on Registration of Objects Launched into Outer Space 1974, International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination 1966, International Convention on the Suppression and Punishment of the Crime of Apartheid 1973, the Vienna Convention on the Representation of States in their relations with International Organization of Universal Character 1975, Vienna Convention on the Succession of States in Respect of Treaties 1978, UN Convention on the Law of the Sea 1982, Vienna Convention on State Property, Archives and Debts 1983, Convention on the Development, Proscription and Stockpiling of Bacteriological and Toxin Weapons and their destruction 1971, UN Convention on the Rights of the Child 1989, UN Convention on Biodiversity 1999, 1992, UN Convention on Forestry 1992, UN Convention on Climate Change 1992, International Convention for the Suppression of International Convention for the Suppression of Terror Terrorist Bombings 1997, International Convention for the Suppression of the Financing of Terrorism 1999, International Convention for the Suppression of Acts of Nuclear Terrorism 2005, which also deserve a special mention, moreover, for the progressive development and codification of international trade law. A United Nations Commission has been established. These conventions and treaties had provided the international systems with a legislative machinery with, though not equivalent to municipal legislative machinery of state legal system, as aptly remarked by Javier Pérez de Cuellar, Secretary General of the United Nations. The magnitude of the achievements of the UN in codifying and progressively developing international law has no precedent in history on land and sea as well as in outer space. The United Nations in the past 70 years has helped to construct a legal network to regulate a wide range of international activities and to set forth international laws, rights and duties. बजट में रेलवे के लिए राज्यवार आवंटन राजस्थान में 56,863 करोड़, 85 अमृत भारत स्टेशनों का निर्माण कार्य हालात को देखते हुए भारत नॉर्वे के बीच ये विदेश मंत्रालय परामर्श बैठक। बजट में रेलवे के विस्तार और आधुनिकीकरण का खाका। नॉर्वे की राजधानी ओस्लो में हुई 12वीं विदेश मंत्रालय बैठक। द्विपक्षीय संबंधों को और मजबूत करने की दिशा में बड़ा कदम। बुलेट ट्रेन इकोनॉमिक कॉरिडोर अमृत भारत स्टेशनों पर जो रेलवे के राज्यवार आवंटन कर्नाटक को रिकॉर्ड 7,748, बेंगलुरु हैदराबाद और बेंगलुरु चेन्नई बुलेट ट्रेन से घटेगा यात्रा समय। बजट में रेलवे के लिए राज्यवार आवंटन तमिलनाडु को 7,691 करोड़, चेन्नई बेंगलुरु और चेन्नई हैदराबाद बुलेट ट्रेन की घोषणा। बजट में रेलवे के विस्तार और आधुनिकीकरण का खाका। राष्ट्रपति डोनाल्ड ट्रंप ने प्रधानमंत्री मोदी से फोन पर की बात। बुलेट ट्रेन इकोनॉमिक कॉरिडोर अमृत भारत स्टेशनों पर अपने प्रिय मित्र राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप से बात करके पता चला। पीएम से रेल मंत्री ने राज्यों के लिए आवंटित राशि की दी जानकारी। मेड इन इंडिया उत्पादों पर अब टैरिफ घटा। 1.4 अरब भारतीयों की ओर से राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप का हार्दिक आभार। पीएम से कोहरे के चलते दिल्ली एयरपोर्ट ने जारी की एडवाइजरी। Merits and demerits of codification. Merits of codification. One of the defects of international law is obscurity and uncertainty. Codification not only makes rules clear and certain but also reconciles conflicting and divergent views. Codification will be helpful in filling numerous gaps existing in international law and also by providing for rules where there is none. Yet another merit of codification is that it will bring uniformity in the international legal system. Codification will also go a long way to end or at least greatly minimize the disagreement and confusion that prevails on many important matters. Codification will enhance the efficacy of international law by increasing its binding force. The International Court of Justice and other tribunals will find it easier to apply and enforce codified international law. It will be easier and convenient to amend the codified international law so as to keep it at pace with the tide of time. What are the demerits of codification? Codification is detrimental for the national growth and future of development of international law. This defect can be remedied by a regular and scientific revision of codes in order to incorporate changes in the international condition. Yet another disadvantage of codification is that it makes the system of law too rigid and unadaptable to new situations. Codification also makes the law too formal and conservative. This defect can be removed by progressive interpretation of international law. New controversies arise due to codification. It gives rise to controversies in interpretation because of the ear-splitting tendency of judges to interpret the law. International law still being in its infancy, only a partial codification is possible. Last but not the least, disadvantage of codification is that customary rules still form the bulk of international law and many of them are not yet fully settled. It may be noted that codification has ceased to be a technical task which can be entrusted to lawyers. It has become a political matter, a task of law creation, and in the absence of any international organ of legislative powers, the contents of the code can be settled only if the representatives of the governments can be made to agree upon them. In its conclusion, we can say critical pursuit of the advantages and disadvantages of codification will lead us to irresistible conclusion that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. Codification will make the law certain, simple, intelligible, and above all, easily accessible to all. Many of the disadvantages of codification may be removed by carefully planning and regular and scientific revision of the code to incorporate changes in international codification. The objective of codification announced in the Charter of the United Nations can be attained without great difficulty in respect to certain less important relations of states where the conflict of interest is not acute. In respect of other relations, much will depend upon the codification mutual confidence that may result from the successful operation of collective security. Products of codification, even if initially approved or accepted only by a limited number of governments, constitute a positive and tangible achievement and a starting point for a gradual extension of their operation in the clarification, development, and codification of public international law and United Nations performance already exceeds the entire record of the 19th century plus that of the League of Nations. It has been aptly remarked the role of codification and progressive development assumes profound significance also because of the complex nature of growing international relations which call for particular formulation and enactment. The articulate and specific instruments of lawmaking, bilateral or multilateral treaties constitute the effective vehicle for regulating international or international interest concerning communication, health, conservation of resources, labor and social matters, marine sources, and space law. Codification and progressive development therefore play an important and vital role in the promotion of world peace, international development and progress. To conclude, in the words of Judge Nagendra Singh, in the international field, there is no lawmaking chamber or legislation as such in the sense as it exists in the principal of the state, and hence the function of codification in the interstate context has not only the objective of scientific determination of the law but also its formulation to meet the new needs of its united universal acceptance as required by the ever-changing demands of the world society of sovereign states. Thus, unlike codification in other fields, it has to be admitted that as far as codification of international law is concerned, it has to be substantially legislative in character. The process of codification must essentially embrace the need to change the law and and to induce government to accept the revision of old laws and the formulation of new ones.